Picture it. The year is 1865. The very first antiseptic surgery is performed in England. And in Jamaica, a massive rebellion strikes out. Stateside, there is a munition factory that blows up due to drunken soldiers and kills 200. And Columbia, South Carolina is burned to the ground. And MIT is founded as the very first architectural school in the U.S. And then we have Abraham Lincoln's funeral train that departs Washington, D.C. in April, the last part of April. It takes a few weeks before it gets to Illinois. About 300 people accompany it, and 13 stops in 7 states before he's laid to rest in May. It is that time that our 17th president is inaugurated. It was a really strange time in America. We are fresh off the war and an assassination, and so a lot of weird stuff is going on. And Andrew Johnson was the vice president to a northern Republican, and he is a southern president coming in to a southern defeat. We have now entered America's Reconstruction era. This is a period of time where the states in the South are being reconstructed, and it's supposed to be a time of, well, in Lincoln's mind, it was supposed to be a time of bringing everybody back together. But that's not exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of aggression coming from the North toward the South, and it's going to end up kind of dooming President Johnson here. Much like Lincoln wanted, Johnson was providing pardons to anyone who was part of the Confederacy, unless they were someone of wealth or someone who had been of a particular height and leadership. To be fair, those people could be pardoned, but they required a special presidential pardon. Johnson wasted no time getting started on all of his Reconstruction goals here. But the Congress didn't meet until December, so he became president in April, and he was trying to make headway. But then the radical Republicans came in, and they just were not happy with anything that was going on. And to be fair, I don't think they would have been happy with anything that was going on. They were very anti-South before Lincoln was assassinated. Then after that, they were determined to make it as impossible as possible to get back into the Union. They wanted the South to hurt. And so once Congress got back together, they took it out on Johnson. To be fair, though, part of the problem was Southern leadership. You know those leaders I talked about a second ago that I said they had to get special pardons? Well, those people were making it especially difficult on the former slaves that lived in the South. They were going back to pre-war restrictions on the black community, which was, of course, causing lots of problems for everybody. And the Republicans were not happy about it. And he wasn't doing a whole lot about it. I mean, he was South, and he represented the South. So that's one of the main reasons they felt like he wasn't really in it the way that they wanted him to be. So they had a plan, the radicals. The first thing they were going to do to not play nice with the South was to not allow any of the former leaderships from the Confederacy take a seat in the Congress today. Next, they tried making legislation to enhance the lives of former slaves. It was a Civil Rights Act. Well, let's just say the president here vetoed it. And for the first time in history, Congress surpassed his veto, and they made it law anyway. Which brings us to the Civil Rights Act of 1866. This act, which was to be the 14th Amendment, said that citizenship is granted to all former slaves, and They are not to be discriminated against. The 14th Amendment specifies that, in quote, no state should deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, when the U.S. sent this to the states to ratify, none of the southern states did, except for Tennessee, which is Johnson's home state. When the southern states basically said no thanks, that gave the radical Republicans all they needed to ensure a win for the next election. They used their power in Congress to create a new Reconstruction plan, which put the South under military rule, and it placed new restrictions on the president. So they were not interested in him continuing power because he was a Southerner, even though he was the vice president under Lincoln. This was essentially meant to put him in a situation where he was going to get in trouble. They wanted him out, and they created these restrictions in order to make him mess up so he would get out. So they believed he eventually did something against the Tenure of Office Act, and at that point, 11 articles of impeachment were filed against him. The Senate tried him, and he was not impeached. He won that based off of one vote kept him in office. Later that year, someone else was elected to be the president, bringing in to Andrew Johnson, our 17th president. Tune in to the next video when a Civil War hero takes the presidency.